Thundergrunt.
Welcome to Writers Blockbusters, the show where we treat the final edit of a movie like the script. I'm one of the hosts, Bob Rose. My handle on Twitter is @ThunderGruntBob, and now the other two guys are going to introduce themselves.
I am Jimmy George. I am a screenwriter and script consultant. My Twitter handle is @JimmyRGeorge.
I'm Jamie Nash, and I'm a screenwriter and writer of Save the Cat Writes for TV. Go buy it today on Amazon. My Twitter account is @Jamie_Nash.
And today we are going to talk about a movie that was both in theaters and is currently available on streaming with Peacock, right? We're going to talk about The Black Phone. Who's the director? It's the guy who did Doctor Strange, right?
Mm-hmm,
Scott Derrickson. See, I'm
Sam Raimi?
Sam Raimi, right? No, it's not Sam Raimi.
No, okay.
Yeah, it's Scott Derrickson, and
I understood that reference.
Right. So before we get into it, let's do our usual thing, right?
Yeah,
and say what we all personally thought of it before we start talking about the actual topics that we want to discuss. So just our water cooler reviews. Who wants to go first?
Jamie, go.
My water cooler review is a very solid single, I think, is my take on this. Like a good movie. I turned it on. I liked it a lot. I think it's very instructive to new writers. It's the kind of thing I like to try to hit a solid single when I write these kind of movies. That's what it was for me. You know, not a huge concept, not a huge epic movie, a simple movie, well made, didn't outstay its welcome, was fun. That's kind of where I'm at with it.
Cool.
All right.
It sounds like a negative review, but it's really not. It's really like it's like not a lot of movies are a good solid single.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
exactly.
Like I could count them on my, so a solid single might put it in the top 10 movies that I've watched this year.
I realize we're doing our reviews, but can you explain to anyone listening what a solid single is exactly?
Well, it's just, baseball terms. Hitting a single means you succeeded. You didn't score a run, maybe. So it wasn't like Babe Ruth might hit a home run, but a good, decent player like Cal Ripken might hit a bunch of solid singles. That's my take.
Okay. I'm just, I was just wondering if people might not know what that was.
I don't know.
But, no, you're good. You're good.
I guess there's the dating version. Like, I'm a solid single. It's like somebody who weightlifts and goes on Tinder. I don't know.
I was just kind of making sure no one was like, why is he talking about the relationship status of the movie? Jimmy, go for it.
So it's fine. This is going to sound negative too, probably, but I don't mean it to be. I feel very much like Jamie. I think it was solid is the word that I was going to use. Just like Jamie said, there's a lot that you can learn from this if you're a new writer, especially if you're someone who's trying to learn horror movies. There's a lot of we've talked a lot in the past about how Disney movies are really easy to learn these techniques from, character arcs, things like that. And I feel like its simplicity, the Black Phone simplicity is a good thing, and it works in its favor. Sometimes simple is better. And in this case, I think that's why it's so good. There's so many things you can learn that we're not going to talk about on this episode, like repetition reversal. The premise delivery is great. Finn's arc is really easy to track and really instructive. There's thematic resonance, I think. There's some really good examples of structural beats, like the Dark Night of the Soul, which we don't have on the talking points, is one of the pure prototypical Dark Night of the Soul scenes. And if you're trying to get your fingers on like the pulse of what Dark Knight of the Soul is and how.
Is it raining? Right. Is it raining in the scene?
No, it's not raining, but I mean, it might as well be. And there's good news, bad news technique. Like there's like 3 or 4 good news, bad news technique scenes that we didn't even track for the episode. And yeah,
my take on it is, this is, if you're a horror screenwriter, this is kind of the type of story you should be writing. You know, it's big, high concept, simple, on a budget, effective. Again, it's paced really well. It's doesn't have a ton of fat in it. It does all the things, checks all the boxes.
Yeah. So, and then I just wanted to add one more thing. If you are listening and you really liked this movie and you haven't heard of a show called Medium, I think the main reason that I had like this was a good movie, but like I wasn't blown away, is because the story engine for that show is this movie, which is Allison, Patricia Arquette's character, has basically dreams and has conversations in real world with ghosts. Both of them are driven by the ghosts of murder victims, who then show her how to find the killer who's still out there killing and how to save the next victim that the killer's about to kill. And the story engine for that show and the way that it plays with those ideas, everything that show did is in this movie. Like, in fact, there's like 4 or 5 episodes where there's serial killers and Allison is working with like 5 or 6 ghosts who are all collectively working to take down this serial killer. And they even like whisper in his ear when she catches them. They all one by one whisper in his ear as he's dying, like things like that. Like, I didn't mean to cut you off, Jamie, but
I something about that, you know, in relation to that, when we get to one of my topics, I've watched every episode of Medium. I think it's I love the cast of that show. I think it does weird things. But one of the problems I had with this movie is something I always had this problem with in Medium. So when we talk about it, I'll get
okay. Awesome.
Yes,
I'm excited to get there. So
I didn't even think about that until you said that. So
they basically split Alison Dubois' powers into 2 characters. So you have one person who dreams, one person, and we're also going to talk about that later, one person who's talking to ghosts. And in that show, she does both in every episode. So Anyway.
Okay.
That's my take.
Yeah, I was going to say, before you said the Medium thing, I was going to say, I really enjoy this movie. Same thing. I'm not going to go crazy over it, but I really enjoy it. For me, it kind of feels like it could be part of an anthology. It feels like that type of story, you know? Really, like you said, James.
Which it was, right?
The short story was part of a group of other short stories.
I had no clue about its origins, so to me, I'm just feeling this naturally by watching the movie. It just feels like an anthology story that was expanded, you know, to
that's exactly what it was. Yep.
So I like it. I don't know if I've watched it twice. I don't know if I truly love it here, but I'll say this is that when my favorite part of the movie, my absolute favorite part of the movie, just objectively, is the one part that's kind of the side thing, which is a different premise, which is a serial killer who has his, slothful idiot brother have to move into his house while he's still trying to maintain his killing schedule, and the killer is really annoyed with his brother living in his house. So, like that. It's a comedy situation.
Two and a Half Men meets Dexter.
Right. It's like this comedy situation that I found I wanted more of that so bad the whole time, because to me that was absolutely enthralling of a concept of just like this dude hates his low life brother, but he loves him still, and he's also a serial killer. Genius.
That's an off-screen movie that's really the off-screen tantalizing.
Movie, and I couldn't help but want it more than the movie I was getting, and that is not an insult to the movie I got. You know what I mean? It's just like, man, that is such a good concept for comedy. I couldn't help but love it. You know, and it's not talked about with this movie that much. It's not pointed out. Like his thing with his brother is just not spoken about that often. Absolutely my favorite part. I love it so much. But yeah,
I'm laughing because I thought it was funny.
Yeah. And it's sort of, I mean, one of the things that makes that leap out, I think, is it's a little bit unpredictable. Like, you're like, where's this going?
It's a curveball.
Like,
it's a curveball.
I was actually kind of disappointed and a little surprised that he just killed his brother in some ways.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was like, oh, that's too easy of a resolution. Like he's been trying to have it both ways for so long. Then just to just kill him wasn't the satisfying resolution I wanted.
I was hoping his love for his brother would stop that from happening.
Yeah, exactly. Like something weird would happen.
And his
there.
brother would be involved in the climax of sorts.
Right.
You know? Right. Yeah, but that aspect was so enthralling to me. And it was even the second watch, I was like, I want a different movie with a slightly different tone that is this. Because the way he talks to the kid is just like, everything's so different. And the guy is like he's the serial killer with this whole agenda and everything, but he's like his soul is broken because his brother is doing coke upstairs. It's great. It's so funny. It's good. Anyway, Jamie, who wrote this shit?
Yes. So this was written by, it's based on a Joe Hill short story. And Joe Hill is the son of Stephen King, if you didn't know. And Scott Derrickson and C. Robert Cargill. Is that how you pronounce his name?
Yep.
Funny. I've known of him for so long, but never said his name aloud.
A great Twitter account.
Yes.
Fantastic Twitter account. Yes.
Yeah. And seems like a really nice guy.
Yeah.
And I guess Scott Derrickson came on the scene with The Exorcism of Emily Rose. Was that kind of his breakout? And then
Hellraiser 4 was his first.
Oh, really?
Hellraiser
I'm not looking
Inferno,
at the credits. Okay.
Which is considered by a lot of people to be the better of the direct-to-video Hellraiser sequels.
Okay.
And he kind of stepped up into theatrical from there.
Exorcism, and of course, Sinister is the one people point to as being kind of that next level. And then they got Doctor Strange, and then
he chose to do this over Doctor Strange too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a Joe Hill short story. And by the way, just to look at the box office super quick, this movie worldwide, $158 million.
Damn.
Pretty crazy, right?
Yeah.
What kind of budget are we talking?
18 million.
Okay, yeah, that's incredible.
Wow.
So I looked it up on Box Office
It's a blockbuster.
Mojo. It is.
Yeah. I looked it up on Box Office Mojo, but now I have lost my tab. So let's see here if I can bring it back up. I won't worry about it. But what I'll say is it came in somewhere around the 20s worldwide. I think it was 21, right behind Nope. So, Nope was, and again, we talked last week that Nope is a more expensive movie. It kind of was this bigger budgeted thing. It was like, I can't remember if it was 60 or 70.
I think you said 70.
I feel like 70. It was a mid-budget movie.
Yep.
Yeah.
So for a solid single of a movie, it's probably a triple as far as budget.
Making their money back, yeah.
A home run as far as money.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's pretty profitable.
Yeah, especially in this day and age because then you figure it went almost immediately to streaming. So, that undercuts like what kind of money some of it could get, but also it probably boosts the stock price of the Peacock.
Well, we did the Northman. That was also like almost the same release plan, right?
That's the second one.
Much different budget, but the same release plan. Yeah. And so, like you said, this started as a short story, right?
It did. It did. So it's a Joe Hill story in the book 20th Century Ghosts. And I wanted to talk very briefly or not so brief. We could talk forever about it. We can just go on about the short story versus the movie. So the movie is very, what's the word? What's the word? Not truthful, faithful. That's the word I'm looking for. It's very faithful to the short story. Just to give you guys a feel, I'll kind of outline the short story.
Because I haven't read it. Yeah,
neither have I.
It's something like, and it's been a little while since I read it, but it's about 30-ish pages. I think it was like maybe 7,000, 8,000 words total. So it's a very, it's not a hugely long short story, a very average short story. And it starts with the kid getting abducted. So our hero getting abducted. It starts with that, the black balloon scene where he's taken in the van. That's where the short story starts. So it immediately ends up in the basement. and the guy talking to him. The guy's very different. If I remember correctly, there's no mask. That part is totally an invention of the movie. Oh. I think his name's like Fat Al or something is the guy who takes him. His nickname is the Grabber and all that stuff.
He's a clown, right? Yeah, that's I read. I did a little digging, and he's a clown. Yeah,
it's funny that might be true. I don't remember that part.
The makeup to like a mask
to a magician.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe it was with the balloons and the clown. It might have been too much like another movie made by somebody's father.
Too John Wayne Gacy-ish.
He was a Gacy-inspired killer.
He was a Gacy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So they kind of sit in the basement, have similar conversations. The black phone's there. It's clear that he has heard the black phone before. But then really the movie goes into like, there's a quick little taste of backstory where, the kid's kind of remembering the first time he heard about the Grabber, and he played in a baseball game against this other pitcher, and he played one time. So that part's there. He remembers that being taken, and he kind of reflects on that was the night his dad had a fight with his mom. So there's a little taste of that,
of like the abusive
thing, but just that's it. It's like that was the same night I heard noises with my dad and mom, and they got in the big fight. So there's just a little taste of these things. And really, if I'm remembering the short story correctly, and I really should have reread it before the baseball kid is the only kid he talks to on that phone. That's it. So, because it is a short story. And basically they get right to the, you have to hit him with the phone kind of thing. Almost,
wow. It
gets to it pretty quickly. I should say. The actual phone calls are dragged out a little bit. Like it takes a little while before he's actually having a conversation with that kid. But that kid ultimately coaches him up, tells him to put the sand on the phone. Now, interestingly enough, the brother is in there. The guy on the phone, he says, his brother's upstairs and he's a druggie and stuff like that. So there's a hint of it. We just don't spend any time with him.
I would have figured that would have been the addition of the movie,
Yeah, and the brother actually comes down and finds him, and he kills the brother. It's so that whole thing plays out very similar, but he doesn't really make any other escape attempts like he does in the movie. He doesn't have like the 3 or 4 escape attempts or anything like that. He basically defeats the villain, gets out. There is a hint of a sister, but the sister's older. There's a hint. There's this one little tiny nugget that kind of says his sister's into tarot cards and stuff like that. But it really doesn't have like the medium aspect that the movie has. Like
gotcha.
it kind of sister being a medium.
Yeah, exactly. There's like this one little sentence about that, as I remember when I read it. And it just kind of hints like that his sister might be a little psychic or something, but it really doesn't say anything more. And then he makes it out, and that's it. So it's with him the whole time in the basement. Everything else, the whole outside world is only in his reflection or his memories or something like that. And I think, so anyway, what we wanted to talk about a little bit was, adapting a short story to a feature. And a lot of short stories get adapted into great features. And I think it's because you can blow them up. And it reminds me of something Neil Gaiman said in his master class, which we've talked about before because I use it in some ways for my setups, which is he approaches short stories as if, imagine there's a whole story before it, but we're just jumping in on we're jumping in on the third act or something like that.
And make every movie a sequel is what you said, Jamie. To a movie that just happened we didn't see.
Right. And now with his short story, that's what I say with my setup thing. But with his thing, he just says, imagine that your short story is the third act. So you don't have to do all the setup and all that stuff. But you're kind of doing it on the fly. Like you're saying you have a sister, but you're not meeting the sister and having a scene with her and all that stuff. So you can almost see where they went through this short story and they plucked those little one sentence things out. And that's what got added to the earlier acts and things like that. It was like, let's set up the sister. It seems like the father has a domestic abuse thing. Let's set that up. And then they gave us scenes with all of those people. They gave us another viewpoint with the daughter. They gave us another viewpoint with the drug addict brother. And all those things, they built up. And then they also, of course, expanded the abduction aspects of the story.
And they show some of the cops too. They show like the law enforcement and stuff.
They show law enforcement. They show kind of the hunt for the killer, things like that. So, it's a very interesting. If you read the short story, you can almost feel how it is truly faithful. It just literally takes each nugget and says, how do we expand this? How do we give this 3 acts as opposed to just have it be one quick act? And I think it does a really good job with it.
It's like they did the whiteboard for each one of those sentences.
Each one of those sentences. Yeah. It's like they mined that short story for each little word and sentence and idea, and they actually kind of stuck to it. And that's what they used, when they expanded their story.
It's like they left the premise almost completely in place and then draped character all over it, right? Because all the family drama is character
and
right?
theme and all these other things.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting too, because when you read this short, I don't remember it has a huge amount of theme. It's enough just to kind of talk about the incident, and it doesn't go really in depth on backstory of characters or feelings or anything like that. It just kind of is enough to tell a little survival story with a little bit of supernatural in it, and then get out. It doesn't hit you over the head with a lot of theme or character arc or why this is so important to this character or anything like that. But anyway, that is the short story.
Well, one of the things I like from listening, actually just listening to you talk about the short story, is I like that there's a genetic explanation for why the boy might have been the one to have this happen. Yeah, because the family obviously has this traumatic thing that's genetic, where they see things or hear things.
They made it organic.
It feels organic, that what was added
instead of like a freak coincidence.
It's like his family has some reason that they hear things or in different ways, right? Really like that.
Jimmy, is that like later on you had a thing about double mumbo jumbo? Is that kind of what you're referring to?
I wanted to. I mean, we can skip down and then I'll go back to, because I do want to talk about. No, it's okay.
No, I think it's a good place for it.
Let's do it. So, like, Jamie, do you want to kind of introduce double mumbo jumbo and then we can kind of talk about it?
Yeah, double mumbo jumbo is a Blake Snyder Save the Cat kind of idea, where he basically says you can't put two magics or two like crazy, I always say buy-ins, like you can't have two buy-ins in the same concept.
Unless you're Marvel, right?
Well, and there are movies, Marvel has shown us that you can, and it's funny because people read that book now and they're like, this guy's an idiot. Every Marvel movie has 10 different magics, and it's honestly there's two funny things about it. Probably when he wrote the book, the world hadn't seen that kind of stuff that much.
That was just like for comic book readers.
We have been conditioned in TV and film since then.
Yeah. Outside of like Cowboys versus Aliens or something, where the concept was, look how ridiculous this is. It's Cowboys. Not that there's buy-in in Cowboys. It's just that's just the time. But anyway, so the idea was, if you have a UFO movie, you can't then suddenly have a ghost movie too. Like it can't be like a haunted house and then totally unrelated, a guy gets abducted by a UFO. Like that's because you see that's really what he was. Yeah,
the example he uses is Stephen King's Dreamcatcher, which works as a novel, but that's 500 plus pages to flesh all of those mumbo jumbos out. But in a movie, we have telekinesis, dream powers, aliens, an alien pandemic. There's also
like mental, multiple personalities, which is also its own thing.
So there's like 6 different mumbo jumbos in Dreamcatcher, and William Goldman, who's like regarded as like one of the great screenwriters, he couldn't even handle that. Like he wrote Dreamcatcher and it's a fucking mess, even though I like the movie, But
Oh, I love that movie.
You put that in a novel,
Yeah.
it works. It works.
Well,
so that's
You know what's interesting too is Stranger Things has like a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
But what Stranger Things does that fixes the problem is it's shared DNA that brings about the stuff. I was working with a client a couple weeks ago. Every now and then I'll do screenwriting consulting like Jimmy, and they had like a time travel. They had a movie that had monsters and had time travel, right? And they hadn't really thought that they couldn't have both. They were like, we have monsters, but then I want it to be like Back to the Future, where they go back and see the monsters before. And to me, it was like the answer was pretty simple. It's like whatever the magic that brings the monsters, whatever that mythology is, if you root your time travel in that, then it's okay.
Yep.
But if you just have like a random guy down the street who has a time travel machine, that's a problem.
Yeah. So the example here that I want to, if taken at face value, I would expect this to feel like double mumbo jumbo, which is first we have a phone that allows you to talk to ghosts, right? So that's its own mumbo jumbo. Then we have, so Finn is the character who experiences all this. Then we have a character, his sister Gwen, who has dreams. And but I think the difference maker is later it's revealed full clarity when she's sitting next to the ghost that's also simultaneously helping Finn, that the ghosts are bringing her the dreams. So it goes to the point you just made, Jamie. Then it becomes one ghost logic, right? So what it's revealed to be is one magic. It's not actually double mumbo jumbo. So I think that's the difference maker here, why it feels okay, because I have heard people complain about it, and I thought going in, I've stayed pretty spoiler free, but it's in the concept itself, and I thought going in that was going to be something that was I wasn't on board with,
right.
I think it works.
Yeah, I think it's one mumbo jumbo that might feel like two, but it's really one. It's cohesive.
Can I also say, like you said about the phone, I've seen complaints about people saying, why is this phone special? And from my read of the movie, especially even the second time, I was like, the phone doesn't matter. It's like, it's not a new mumbo jumbo. It's not a haunted phone. It's not a special phone. It's just how that kid is having his visions.
It's how the ghosts have chosen.
Yeah, the phone is literally incidentally there, and it's just how it's happening. It doesn't.
And the phone, they didn't do anything with this, but that's like a very famous party game. The black phone is like a Bloody Mary,
right?
And so I'm sure that was the root of that, but the seed of it all anyway, which is the black phone. You dial numbers on the phone, you hang it up, you do stuff, and then you talk to ghosts. So my
point is, though, the phone isn't special. It's just a thing in the room.
Yeah.
And the kid's having like these visions that's incorporating his surroundings. It has nothing to do with that phone being special or haunted or anything.
The phone is not magical.
It's not magical. And I've seen people like complain about the movie with that in mind. Like, what is with this phone? Like, why?
And you know why? Because they're feeling this double mumbo jumbo.
They're feeling a little bit.
They're feeling double mumbo jumbo. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you could make a lesser movie where the room's just haunted with the dead people and they show up, but instead they're kind of using the mechanism as the phone because it's kind of fun.
But I think what's instructive is what you said, Jamie, which is the example you gave. Like, if you can find a way to make your multiple sets of magic all interconnected to one set of logic, then it absolves you of that confusion, and it works. So, yeah,
and I think it works here.
Yeah,
I think it does. Yeah, but
awesome.
I
wanted to go back to perspective.
I was gonna say, let's go back to POV, right?
Yeah, since Jamie, because you said the story is all through the kid's perspective, right? That's like 100%. Everything, right?
Yep. So I think never deviates at all. There's no.
That's right.
That's so. Right. Okay, and that's like a. I don't know. Is there like a codified film version of first person, second person, third person of how in a novel you write, or a short story you write things in first person, you write things in second person, you write. There's in film, that's sort of like a really important choice to make up front.
The funny thing is, it's a really important choice, and it confuses people because when you start talking about it, they think it's like found footage or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You start talking about
that
POV.
Serious.
It just means that you're only going to shoot things that are kind of revealed to your main character as they're revealed to the audience. They're revealed to the main character. That's really what it means in the film, I think. But you don't have to shoot it from their eyes, like in a book.
It's not a first person.
Yeah,
game.
It's perspective.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
and we haven't discussed this topic very much in the show, but one great episode we talked about this a lot in was Dr. Sleep. How by playing with those perspectives, by constantly swapping the perspectives, it gives you as a writer this extra tool to create tension and suspense and disorientation to the point where it's just enough. We know just enough to keep us off balance and keep us interested into wanting to know what's next. And we don't know enough. I
also think it could be dangerous.
Yes.
Because let's say the kid is really scared, locked in the basement, but then you're flashing to the cops who are on the hunt and they're closing in.
Yep.
It can kill tension.
Yep.
It can alleviate tension when maybe you shouldn't be alleviating tension.
Exactly.
So there's dangers with it too.
You have to proceed with caution, but I wanted to go through the examples of how this does it right. And this is another really instructive technique that this story uses. So we have 4 different perspectives in the film, which is really like when you're watching it, it doesn't feel like you're having that many different perspectives, but we really are. We've got Gwen's perspective. And so when we're with Gwen, we see we see 100% what she sees. So we're locked into what Gwen is seeing, but we're not ever sure whether what she's seeing is going to get us to the rescue of Finn. We're trying to like, just as she is, understand what all the things she's seeing means, and we're trying to answer questions constantly that she's trying to answer. So we're never given, like you said, Jamie, we're never given like, yes, this is the house, like right where he is. We know exactly where the house is. We see the house, but we don't know where it is, and we don't know how far away she is from that house or finding that house. So there's constant tension through her perspective. Then we have Finn's POV, and this is like my favorite thing they do, which is we only learn about the situation itself what Finn knows. We don't know, like, first we're like, what the hell is happening? Then we're like, what is that phone? Then we're like, who or what is calling? Then we're like, who is this grabber? And what does he plan to do with Finn? We're constantly being given new questions to ask, and creating new tension and new suspense through every new call is giving us new information. And it's information that only Finn knows. And so we don't know anything else. And it's a nice, they took that short story and that section of it, they did exactly what the short story did, which is we're only learning what Finn does. Then there's the perspective of the grabber. And as soon as Finn is kidnapped, we are always shown, or often shown, where the grabber is in proximity to him. And it creates tension, right? Like the grabber's sitting, waiting outside the stairs, just waiting. Finn doesn't know that. But since we know that, it creates this extra set of tension. Like if you take that away, it's actually less tense. Like you would think knowing where the grabber is would make it less tense, but knowing where he is actually works.
Amps it up.
Amps it up. It's that slippery slope.
It's also like one of the few times we're like ahead of Finn,
yes,
right?
The superior position. Yeah,
superior position. Right?
Yeah. So they use superior position in 2 perspectives, which is the grabber, and then it's the detectives. We even get our like you said, Bob. They chose to do a little bit of detectives,
a little bit of cops. I like the cops. Yeah,
I like the cops too, and I think that really the power of choosing to do those cops is another bit of keeping us off balance, because we're following their investigation, and for most of the time we don't know whether they're getting closer or not. We kind of only know what they know, just like with Finn and just like with Gwen. We kind of go like, are they getting close? And then they do that one swap where they give a superior position, which is they show that the cops were literally on top of Finn and didn't even know it, and then they take it away again. Like after that we don't know where the cops are looking, how close it is to Finn, to the very point when they get to that house and it's the wrong house, you know?
If not
right
for
house,
the mumbo jumbo, he would have succeeded, right?
Yeah.
Like they would never have found anything.
So I think this is a good example of how to study. You can study this and see how it plays with swapping perspectives where the short story didn't, to a greater effect in the film. Like if they had just kept it to Finn's perspective, it would be a very different experience and probably not as good of a movie. So I think it's really instructive.
It would be solid as like a one location movie.
Yeah. Yeah,
like Buried or something.
Yeah, it would be like buried with new skin. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and there's certainly horror and thrillers that do
Absolutely.
But it's kind of like their gimmick almost in some ways. Not even a gimmick necessarily, but they're very claustrophobic.
They do a great job of making this feel fleshed out like a full movie. Like it doesn't feel like you said, Jamie. It doesn't feel gimmicky at all. Like
no.
Well, one of the things that's not related to screenwriting that I really liked about the movie was the nostalgia was a little different for me. It wasn't like Stranger Things nostalgia, but it felt like whoever created this movie grew up in that time frame. It felt familiar to me because I grew up. I'm a little bit probably younger than this time. Seemed like late 70s kind of era. Was that? Did we get it?
Yeah, late 70s, 78.
By the way, that was the one thing I can't remember from the short story. If it was period, I can't remember that.
Oh, interesting.
I just don't remember that even being an issue with it, because he's in the basement and there's this old black phone and, I can't remember. But yeah.
Scott Derrickson is 56 years old.
Okay.
So that seems like the right time period, right?
Yeah, I get some quotes when we started talking about other stuff. I got some quotes from them about the choices to put it there.
Yeah, so that stuff to me felt like a very important part about why they wanted to, or they got excited about making this movie, because they did it in such a way that it didn't feel nostalgic, but to me it felt real. It very much was evocative. And I was a very little kid at that time, but that was a time like one of my first memories was like the Atlanta child murders, if you remember those, or when the kids went missing in Atlanta, and that was a big news story every night. So stranger danger, all that stuff, and that was right in the 70s. And I don't know, I just got a good feel.
There's nothing garish about the nostalgia in the movie.
No,
I mean, the biggest needle drop is like the scene with the bully in the convenience store playing pinball. Like that's like the biggest needle drop in the movie. And I don't think it feels garish at all. It feels it feels in tone and everything.
Right.
Yep. I know that. Yeah, we're talking about filmmaking now, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. There's writing there, Bob.
There is, but it's a lot of execution too. It could be overbearing with like, it's the 70s.
If it was Detroit Rock City,
or something like that, which I'm down with.
I love
not for this movie.
No, with their adaptation. I don't even remember in the short story if it configured a time. So that was a big choice.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It was a big choice.
It paints everything with
like
that.
Like brush
time setting. Yeah.
And maybe it's just because I'm a horrible reader or have a bad memory, but I just don't even remember it being important from reading the short story, like when it was, because he was trapped in the basement.
Yeah.
It's like, who cares?
Yeah. The world is happening out there. You're in this cold four walls.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's remember the movie Room, and not The Room.
Yeah.
Room.
Yeah. Where Captain Marvel origin story. No.
Right. Well, no, you're not right.
Yeah.
Man.
It's the same actress.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is an interesting question and a weird one, right? That you guys put down, because I think the answer for most people will be simple, but what's the genre?
Yeah. And I tell you why. Yeah. I tell you why I put this down.
Okay.
Because last time we had a thing that I went into surely thinking it was a horror movie, and I came out thinking, or a monster in the house movie, which I'll talk about in 1 second. And I came out saying, oh, that's not a monster in the house movie. It was a horror movie, but not a monster in the house. And that was Nope. So if you listen back to Nope, you'll see me talk about a movie that I think is a horror movie, but isn't a monster in the house movie. So when I was watching this one, I was having the same kind of conversation in my head. And here's why. So that Nope was in my head, right? I was like, I'm not just going to immediately go to monster in the house with this. And let me go to another. I'll go to another genre. So the genres, by the way, genres are Save the Cat Thing, Blake Snyder, their story patterns. They usually can use them to help brainstorm a story. If you have a concept, like let's say you just know you want to do something about a black phone that talks to, you can talk to dead people with, and there's a magic phone that talks to supernatural. You can use these story patterns to kind of brainstorm what type of story you want to tell. Maybe you want to tell a buddy comedy with it, and the person on the other end of the phone is it's Kevin Hart. I don't know.
You're
Kevin Hart's on the other end.
Right.
Whatever. Or Kevin Hart's the other guy. I don't know. And he's a psychic now. Maybe you want to tell a Golden Fleece story. I don't know what that would be. You're searching for the supernatural phone or something. So anyway, you can go through these different ones. One is Buddy Love. One is Golden Fleece. And then there's one we talk about all the time, which is Monster in the House. Monster in the House. So I'm going to talk about another one before we go into Monster in the House. And that's Dude with a Problem. So here is the definition of a dude with a problem story. Okay. Dude with a problem. An innocent hero who is dragged into a mess without asking for it or even aware of how they got involved. So it's really just somebody that's not, unlike like a cop or something or a spy. This is just somebody plucked off the streets.
And isn't John McClane, isn't Die Hard a dude with a problem story?
It is a dude with so he's a cop, but it's really not his beat. You know what I mean? It's not really his beat.
It's not his world. Yeah.
It's not his world. Like a Jedi Knight getting swept into Darth Vader's problem is a different story than a cop from Tatooine or something. Getting swept into the problem.
That would be an awesome Star Wars.
Yeah, there you
movie,
go.
by the way.
Cool. So the second part, a sudden event that thrusts our innocent into the world of hurt, and it comes without warning. Okay, so some sudden event happens, and now they're in the world. Okay, now they're in the problem.
See where you're going with all this, Jamie.
Yes, and the third one is a life or death battle is at stake, and the continued existence of an individual, family, group, or society is in question. Okay, so this movie fits all of those things, right? Mm-hmm. And honestly, here's one of the things I found through using these patterns. They're not as good for classifying movies as they are for brainstorming. Like the thing I told you to do is So if you think this movie's a dude with a problem and that helps you, then think it's a dude with a problem. I don't care. That if it helps you, it helps you. But just because we come and do this podcast and we discuss this, I was like, it is a dude with a problem. But it's also a monster in the house. So let me give you the monster in the house. And instead of using the actual definition, a monster in the house has a monster, a house, and a sin. Mm-hmm. A sin that usually brings about the monster. So the house is the trap. It's some place. It's some geographical place. It could even be the world, something like Independence Day. The house is the world. It's the planet Earth.
The whole planet.
And the monster's there. And usually some sin, and I say this one every week, but Poltergeist is the one I always use. Mm-hmm. They built the houses,
they removed the headstones.
They removed the headstones, so they left the bodies. That's a sin. It brings about the trouble in some ways. Sometimes it's more just like corporate greed, like an alien. Mm-hmm. We sent them there. The monster's there, corporate
and
greed.
The heroes are like collateral damage for a sin they had nothing to do with.
Sin they have nothing to do with. So this fits that as well.
What's the sin?
What's the sin?
I wanted to talk about.
I'm not exactly sure. And it's not because I didn't think it's there. I just didn't pay attention to that part of this enough when I watched it.
I'm only asking because I'm trying to think right now.
I have a pitch and then I have a quote.
Okay. So why don't you give us your pitch?
Two different things. They're different. I mean, getting a quote from the writer sort of tells us, but so I thought that the sin was like not standing up for very similar to Chris allowing himself to be marginalized in Get Out, which is not standing up for yourself and allowing yourself to be bullied. In the go to the classroom scene, which is something that like the three of us have taught. I don't think that's codified outside of this podcast. It's something we talk about, which is there's a scene usually in a classroom with a chalkboard where like the theme is stated on the nose and saying to the audience, here's what the theme is, and then we see that played out, the trials and tribulations that give meaning to that theme. And here we have a very clear go to the classroom scene, which is in the bathroom after he just saw that little guy, his friend, beat up the big bully. And we've seen Finn allow himself to be bullied. And that kid says to Finn, like, one of these days you're going to have to learn to stand up for yourself. And I think that that's basically the whole movie is an exploration of that, which is like, there's so many ways. Like, you get Finn versus Bruce in the beginning. Like, he's intimidated by the batter and he allows himself to be intimidated and overpowered, and the batter hits a home run. Then we see Moose, the big bully, versus the little guy, Robin, who it's sort of like a micro snapshot of what the whole movie is about, right? This little guy in a bloody battle versus a big bully, and he overcomes them. Then we have Finn and Gwen versus their dad, who's like an emotional bully. And then we have Finn versus that gang in the bathroom, right? And then we have Gwen versus the detectives. The detectives are bullying his sister. It's all about allowing, and she's the one who's constantly fighting back, so she doesn't need to learn the lesson. But I think The Sin is about that. But Cargill there's a great article, look it up on creativescreenwriting.com, where he talks about all sort of their decisions going into this, talking about the adaptation and sort of expanding on what the movie's about. And he said, the resiliency of youth is the principal theme we're exploring in film, but we also dip our toes into the layer of awfulness that coated the childhoods of the 70s and early 80s. Those are times we remember rather than sugar-coated nostalgia. Our youth was ugly, tinged by a racist, homophobic society in which discipline was indistinguishable from abuse. And we wanted to explore that. So,
yeah. So, it's so just to kind of piggyback on yours. So if you're doing a Save the Cat, if you're into Save the Cat, there's a beat called Theme Stated. So the go to the classroom, the theme stated, it's the same thing. And a lot of people come to me and they ask me, like, they get stuck on theme stated a little bit. If you know your character's arc, that means they have a flaw that needs to change, right? So basically the theme stated moment is some other character calls them out on that flaw. And that's exactly what that bathroom scene is. You got to stand up for yourself. That's usually what the theme stated scene is. You got to stop lying. You got to be nicer, whatever it is.
You got to start caring about somebody other than yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So usually if you're trying to figure out what your theme stated is, show your hero's flaw, show it in a scene, and then have somebody call them out on it. Like, say, here's what you need. And that's usually your theme stated scene. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that's my quick aside. Here's the only weird thing about that. I don't know, maybe this is just personal to me, but you got to stand up for yourself. I think it's because I was raised in that generation and I hated that.
Yeah.
It's a false theme to me. Like when I was getting bullied, I didn't need somebody to say, punch him back. That's not the right answer to that, is it?
I don't know if it is. I don't read it. To me, if that is, we were talking about The Sin, that doesn't read like a sin to me.
Yeah.
It reads like a character arc.
Yeah.
It doesn't read like, I don't know. It does like.
Well, here's another quote. And it is, I agree with you, Jamie. It's sort of saying might makes right.
Yeah.
Which I don't like. Even though I like watching that play out, it's very engaging.
Well,
Like if I'm in a situation and I have a disagreement,
it's realistic. I don't
think I'm a better person if I choose to.
I don't like calling it
a
sin. I don't like calling it the sin. That's the.
Yeah. So Bob, to your point, let's. I'll dig into one more quote, and maybe this will sort of expand the discussion on this.
Yeah.
So they're talking about what the grabber is and how it expresses like what we just talked about. So Cargill said. The grabber is the child of trauma, much like Finney and Gwen. He allowed his trauma to transform him into a monster. He has ritualized his killings, hinting at a similar previous abuse that makes him what he is. He is a monster meant to be deconstructed, hinting at his past only through subtext and strange statements. But if you pull all the threads he leaves behind, he becomes pretty understandable. So maybe it's more childhood trauma. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be
It
like
also sounds like a generational thing too.
Yeah.
From that generation, right?
it could be like because
cycle of violence.
Yeah. I mean, in a weird sort of way that hit him back as part of the problem, and to me, and his dad, like what his dad's doing is the same thing that the grabber's father presumably
you need to learn.
did. Yeah. So and what's the game that the grabber plays? Bad Kitty or something?
The Naughty Boy.
Naughty Boy. Yeah.
Naughty Boy, right.
So I think all of that is probably where the sin lies. It probably is in there for sure.
So none of us have figured it out. It's
It's also interesting that, hear me out too. It's interesting that the sin of the grabber was obviously created in his childhood from some sort of abuse by his family. But his brother seems not only completely divorced from that, he doesn't seem to change. He doesn't seem to affect the grabber's. You know what I mean? Like his brother just doesn't seem like he's part of that sin at all. You know, like he came from a different world.
That's interesting.
But he still loves his brother.
Coked up.
He is coked up.
He's
You're right.
numbing
He's doing
the pain,
a lot of
dude.
coke. He's doing a lot of coke.
Right.
So,
yeah.
So there is that. Yeah. I'm not. That wasn't a criticism. I'm just saying it's noticeable.
Yeah. It's a bit not clear.
Yeah.
It's not clear. No, it's fine that it's not clear.
And maybe the go to the classroom then is more about just Finn. But again, I'm with you, Jamie. I do like the stand up for yourself, but the might makes right part. But in the situation, it's primal danger. He's got to beat the shit out of him in order to escape. So it's we get it. But
I find it odd that the ghosts don't more recommend the whole part of it. The hole that he falls in. Like that's not the end recommendation of the ghosts. It's the phone hitting thing. Where I'm like,
he made the.
Why didn't they recommend the thing that worked way better?
Well, I think they were.
I know.
We're going to speak to it later. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one more thing about this genre thing.
Yeah.
So interestingly enough, and I have this is so I've worked with these for a project that will soon be announced. I've worked with these mysterious teas. I've done some work with these genres. And what I realized was, and this goes back to my computer science days in some ways, because in computer science, there's this notion of inheritance. So inheritance means like you could create a class. I'm about to give a computer science lesson. And create a class. And let's say
that's why we're here.
That's right. Let's say a class is a vehicle, right? And then a vehicle could be a bike. It could be a car. So your second class inherits from the class vehicle, whatever its things are, and then it becomes a bike, a car, something like that. Maybe you have wheeled vehicles, then cars. Maybe there's something else. Sled is in the non-wheeled or something. But anyway, this makes it more confusing. I'm sorry. All I'm really trying to say.
We're with you.
Okay. All I'm really trying to say is
I'm taking notes.
I think Monster in the House inherits from Dude with a Problem in my computer science brain. I think all Monster in the House are Dude with a Problem stories, with a little touch of something. I think if you have a Monster in the House, it could theoretically be declared a Dude with a Problem story. And I think there are a lot of stories.
Is what you're saying.
Inherently.
Dude or dudette, yeah.
Yes. I think they share the same, all Monster in the Houses share all the same things that Dude or Dudette with a Problem stories have, is what I'm saying. And just to give you an example, like the thing I was doing, I made like a little quiz to figure out what your story is. And I'm like, does your story have an innocent hero? Does it have a son? It was that kind of thing. And it was like, go to question 7, and then you go to question 7. And what I realized was because I ran this through like, a million times with a bunch of movies in my head. And I had to ask if you were a dude with a problem first. And then I'd say, is there a sin that brings about the monster? And I had to do that after to determine if it was a monster in the house. So my first determination in my algorithm was, are you a dude with a problem? Yes. Well, do you have a monster? Do you have a house? Do you have a sin? And it was that kind of thing. So I think that's kind of where my head was around this genre thing when I was thinking.
No, it's an interesting discussion and especially with this movie. Yeah.
Yes. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say on that.
Oh yeah, and the other one, just one more thing it does share with Monster in the House is the Half Man. This has got like your prototypical
you're right.
half-man character, which is like, it's your Quint from Jaws. It's the person who's either survived the monster from a past encounter or has extensive knowledge of the monster that no one else in the story has, and they're like the harbinger, and
the half kids.
And this is man, the half kids. I was like, this is a cool half man, and it's premise specific. Like the half men or the child ghosts of the grabber victims is something we could only see like in this movie with this premise. So it's a nice. It's a nice, another instructive thing that this movie does that you can learn from. So I didn't want to forget about that.
No, that's one of the coolest aspects of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Easily. Yeah. I feel like we kind of have touched on tension a little bit already.
I'll tell you what this one was.
Is this the medium discussion about what pisses you off?
This is the medium.
This is the medium thing?
So my issue with medium is, so every week she'd have a problem, right? And every week, as the writer decided when to dole out the information, the writer would have her dream. Mm-hmm. And she would solve the mystery. And it was kind of like the writer could say she dreams the whole thing in the beginning or in the end or withhold the information. But basically, it was really up to when the writer decided she was going to dream and figure out the mystery that she'd figure out the mystery.
She could never control the dreams.
She could never control the dreams. And 90% of what she figured out was based on the dreams. I mean, she figured out a little nuances like, I don't quite understand.
She talked to ghosts in the real world, too.
Yeah.
But it was like whenever the writer chose that made the most sense in the moment.
Yeah. Right. So it tends to make for a little bit of passivity and a little bit of predictableness in some ways, because the dreams aren't going to screw her over, because that would just be horrible for the show, right? If all of a sudden the dreams were complete lies. Yeah. And they were just real dreams, and she was like following the clues and getting everything wrong. That'd be horrible for an episodic show, or maybe it would be great if it was a comedy. So I kind of.
That'd be a kind of amazing idea.
Oh my God, like a full triumphant medium who has
who just has dreams.
Like imagine Harold and Lloyd as mediums. Holy shit.
Yeah, exactly. They just start, they're on some new drug and it's causing them.
The ghosts are like just like trying so hard to get them to help them solve the thing, but they're so dumb.
They're so dumb. So my problem with my one nitpick with this movie is the kid, basically the hero of this movie, basically is just doing what he's told and not really doing a lot of clever problem solving on his own, and not really doing things to initiate the phone calls. You know what I mean? Like to me, it takes away some of the tension of the movie. I know eventually he's going to get out, and I kind of know how he's going to get out. They're eventually going to tell him how to get out or something. I don't know. Anyway,
I think the execution kind of fills in those holes a bit, because the actual performance of the kid is very determined. Like the performance that the kid gives feels like he doesn't have the answers, but he's absolutely down to figure this out and get out of here.
Yeah.
But I think there is writing craft that sort of, I think they're aware of what you're saying, Jamie. Like there's I'll say the one thing, and then the next two topics sort of address that very problem, because I agree with you in the point you just made. There was a nice right smack in the middle of the story. I think they were acknowledging, it wasn't like an insecurity line, but I think they were trying to throw us off balance. And that is they tried to create tension around the trustworthiness of the messengers, which is the dad is basically trying to convince the sister that she is not having psychic visions, even though he knows she might actually be having psychic visions, because those psychic visions then led her mother to follow their instructions and basically kill herself. So the movie is like taking this like 2-minute scene and raising the stakes for the like almost like reliable narratorness of the ghosts who are behind this. And I think they were trying to plant the seed that maybe the messages that she's getting in the dreams and maybe the messages that Finn is getting aren't trustworthy. And I
Right.
think that was a nice little like extra sizzle on the steak there to be like, hold on, maybe just, I think it was just enough. But not only that, the next topic, which is the premise specific tactics. And then later when we'll talk about the choices, I think there's enough there to kind of earn that little bit of agency. Cause I agree with you, Jamie. So let's just go into it. Like, when you're trying to figure out like how your character is going to overcome their conflicts, you want to make a whiteboard of all the different ways they could get out of the situation they find themselves in, but you want to do it in a way that you could only see in this movie. So like my favorite example of there two favorite examples of a premise specific tactic that we could only see in the movies is Jurassic Park, when Dr. Grant is like, stay absolutely still. The T-Rex is like right in front of them. Their vision is based on movement. That is a tactic that is so specific to the movie. And they really did the whiteboarding. Like, how are the ways that we could show surviving a dinosaur when you're like face to face with a T-Rex? And then Chris in Get Out, when he tears out the cotton from the chair and puts the cotton in his ears, that is a tactic that is so specific to that movie. If you put that tactic in another movie, it's not special. If you put it in this movie, it's like it expresses the movie in one little snapshot. It's perfect. So I really appreciated like how they took like, well, Finn has like nothing to work with. How is he gonna get out of the situation and all those things? Like Jamie, he was following the advice of the ghosts, but there's always, I don't know when you saw it last, but like there's a hiccup in every one of the ghosts instructions. It doesn't go as planned.
Right.
And so he is being told what to do, but it's not that easy. And Finn always has to go like the extra mile and be like, shit, like now I have this tool that the ghosts helped me discover, but it's not working the way that it was. So they show how he like, okay, I got to pick up the rope I'm not able to get it on the window. I got to pick up this roll of carpet. Like the ghost didn't tell him to pick up the rope, and he puts it under the rope.
The ghost told him to try to go through the freezer. In the end, though, he goes, you know what I can use? That meat to distract the dog.
Right.
That's him.
That's him.
It's not
but also in like to that one, the toilet, right? The ghost like get to the back panel of the toilet and unscrew it. Well, he can't unscrew it, so he takes a piece of the toilet apart and uses it like a screwdriver.
So yeah, he does
that's
have
like,
some. Yeah,
that's like a nice little moment of like premise specific tactics. They really did a whiteboard. They're like, okay, he's got to unscrew a screw. What the hell is he going to do that we can only see in this room? And he MacGyvered, right? It's like, what? It's that exercise we've talked about before. Like, what is your character and your movie's version of MacGyvering the shit out of this? Like, how do you make your character look like MacGyver based on the scenario they find themselves in? And that exercise is going to get you to a lot of different things. So, and I really liked my favorite tactic. I wanted to point out before we get to the not so secret weapon, my favorite one, and the ghosts, they did a whole whiteboard with the ghosts, guys. Like the ghosts are using very specific tactics to gain his trust, right? They're finding familiarity with him, so he trusts what they're saying. They're spinning the bottle that he has in front of them to point him in the direction. They're doing very specific tactics that are like very clever and we can only see in this situation. But my favorite one is they do a premise pretzel, Jamie, where they don't let the phone ring because they don't want to wake up the grabber. The grabber's asleep and they need to talk to Finn. So they show themselves to Finn for the first time and he's like, holy shit. And then they point to the phone and he picks it up and it isn't ringing. So because they don't want to wake up the grabbers. That was a nice premise pretzel.
The door is open and everything.
The door is open. The grabber's asleep. The grabber has been set up that he can hear the phone ring. So they don't want to wake him up. So they don't ring the phone. And it's a nice reversal. So they definitely took the time. That was a whiteboarding. They took the time. They're like, how can we make this different than all the other phone rings? You know? So I really appreciated that.
That's
good stuff.
Yeah. That's really good. So, not so secret weapons.
So, this I knew going into it that the not so secret weapon was going to be the black phone. I just didn't know how we were going to get there.
Right.
And that's in the short story as well.
That's awesome.
That is one of the cool things about the short story.
So the not so secret weapon. Do you want to set it up, Jamie, or do you want me to set it up? It doesn't matter.
Oh, feel free. You can give it a run.
So it's basically like it's a specialized person, place, or thing that the hero, it's set up in the beginning, and when it's done well, it's not obvious. It's like really subtle. And then it comes back in the end, and the hero uses it to succeed, to overcome their obstacles. So some examples: Luke using the Force to blow up the Death Star in Star Wars, crossing the streams in Ghostbusters, the oxygen tank in Jaws, the Ripley's loader, Cecilia using the invisibility suit we saw like 10 minutes into the thing to beat the Invisible Man, the mud camouflage in Predator, the dead and buried alt-verse Doctor Strange in Spider-Man No Way Home. And most recently, we didn't talk about it on the Nope episode, but the Nope has two back-to-back. The well camera is a not-so-secret weapon, and the giant balloon jupe is a not-so-secret weapon. So it actually uses two in the same moment. But since we've been doing the show and since we've come up with this, I am convinced it is a crucial ingredient to the cheeseburger movie. I literally see it in everything now. Like, I'm like, there it is. It's setup payoff, but it's so specialized. It's the setup payoff.
Yeah, it's like the ultimate setup payoff.
Yeah,
That's really it.
It's like you can't have a cheeseburger. Yeah, it's the Chekhov's. It's the setup, the main one. It's like, you can't have a cheeseburger movie without a not so secret weapon.
Right.
And this one is, I love this dialogue. I was like, I gotta say this. Robin, the ghost, says, "Since I can't kill him, you're gonna have to do it for me." And Finn says, "How?" He says, "You're gonna use a weapon. Not just any weapon, the not so secret weapon, the black phone itself. Fill it with dirt." And that is a tactic we could only see in this movie, right? So it's another great example of premise delivery, like giving us
here's one of the things, like, and again, they made their choice, but this is a spot where sometimes you'd see the hero do it without the magic. So he'd figure out, I'm going to use this fucking phone. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, well, weapon, what? And he looks at it like, I'm going to do it. You know, so he finally he doesn't need the ghosts anymore. He's got his own mind to use it. That's kind of what I mean by, like, they could have done that, but they didn't really. But sometimes the last one is the one they do it without the magic. They kind of figure it out.
It's like
he's still trapped, I guess.
The Angels in the outfield thing, right? Like the Angels can take so far, and you got to win championships on your own.
That's a good point. Yeah, do it without them. Yeah.
No, I mean, he does do it without the magic.
Yeah,
they're not fighting him.
Nice.
They're not fighting, but you're right. He could have came to that realization.
Yeah, he could have he could have taken what they taught
the weapon
him
thing,
and been like, now I'm going to figure it out on my own. You know, I'm going to do it because I think
you could argue that he did do that, right? Like, he took all those things and made the trap. They just didn't romance.
I agree with Jamie that the moment might have been cooler of him, like us being with him and realizing what he has to do with all that he has. You know,
that's a good point. So you sort of miss the gathering, the team of that whole trap. Because they just tease it. They don't show you.
Right. Like him realizing, like, okay, I've got the hole over here. I've got the phone. I'm going to fill it with dirt.
The Rambo montage of him. Like,
even if you pared it down to just them not telling him to fill the phone with dirt or use the phone. Yeah. You say you need a weapon, and then he comes to the realization, I got to make the phone heavier so I can hit with it. You know?
Yeah, it probably would have worked just as well.
Yeah. I think it would have just been that. Anyway, that's kind of what I'm mentioning.
It'd be a little bit more fun.
That goes back to your problem with the medium,
right?
Ghost doing all the heavy lifting.
I think there are ways to figure it out, and that way he would have been delivered to this moment because of all the help the Ghost gave him. But then we'd see him kind of, you know, they let him go and he flies, sort of.
You know what
sort of aspect.
It's a little bit. It's like Signs. The moment they realize that it's water, it's
not a secret weapon.
Right. But it's like we see the way it's executed is we see in Joaquin Phoenix's like eyes that he's realizing why it's all been like it has been. Yeah. And that, I don't know, that might have been like a kind of moment you could construct here.
It's a bit more heroic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's fine.
Good
It's
call.
still
Good call, Jamie. Yeah,
It's
no,
still good. It's
they
just
do make it a little easier for him with the ghost, like training him. You know, the Rocky. You're gonna swing.
yeah.
I do. I mean, not to take away. I love the phone as the weapon kind of
too.
idea. I mean,
Yeah,
it's really
totally. Yeah,
it's great.
No, it works. I think it's an execution thing. It is a writing thing, but I think it's all. I'm thinking about cinematically that moment happening, then the music kind of swelling up as he realizes and everything. That's what we were robbed of a little bit.
Dun, dun, dun.
Right. Well, not that big, but you know what I mean. Like him just realizing it would have been a nice moment.
Yeah,
that's all. Yeah. Does that kind of bring us into dilemmas and meaningful choices?
Yeah. So this is another. So I'm constantly, and Jamie, tell me if you can bounce off of this with your own experience. I'm constantly reading scripts where there are no dilemmas. So, you know, I've talked about the treasure hunt, where it's just like they get the map, they get in the boat, they go across the sea. I dropped my thing.
Jimmy dropped his whole computer. He's okay.
My headset came off. That's great. See, I had a complication.
There it is. Yeah,
and I made a meaningful choice to keep fucking talking, even though you couldn't hear me.
The good news, bad news thing right there.
So they got the map. They get in the ship. They cross the sea. They get to the island, and they get there, and the treasure's there, and that's the whole movie. And the writer thinks, well, like, look at all the stuff that happened, and all that stuff is really cool and cinematic, and there's like so many reasons why that's a boring experience. And one of them is they didn't have to be like, okay, well, we only have one can of food left, and there's 5 of us. Like, how are we going to ration this food? Like, somebody is more sick than the other. Somebody might not be able to eat. Oh shit. Now we don't have any food. Like, and this person just died. They could be food. Like, but then we'd be eating them. Like, there are no dilemmas the characters have to face in order to get the treasure. And so I think this is a great example of the character being faced with dilemmas and making meaningful choices. So I wanted to break down just a couple examples of Finn's choices that he makes that I think are powerful, which is, the first one is, you're locked in this basement, you see this phone and the cord is ripped off. It's a dead phone and it starts ringing. Are you going to answer it? What the hell is going to happen if you do? Right? This is weird. It's a meaningful choice to answer the phone. Then you're talking to quote unquote ghosts. Are you really? Or are they working with the killer? You don't really know. It's a meaningful choice to follow their instructions, right? You're faced with a dilemma. I could ignore their instructions. And if I ignore their instructions, I'm at the same place that I started. I'm not any closer to getting out of here. If I follow their instructions, those instructions might be working against me. And so it's a meaningful choice to follow the instructions. And then the grabber leaves the door open. And the movie plays with this choice over and over. Do I walk upstairs? If I walk upstairs, these ghosts have just told me it's a trap and he's going to beat me to death. If I don't walk upstairs, I may miss out on my one opportunity. Maybe he slipped up. And this is my one opportunity to escape. And I'm just staring at it and not doing anything about it. So it's a meaningful choice. There's also power in showing a person choosing not to do something. That's just as powerful as a choice to do something. And then choosing to walk upstairs when the ghosts say he's asleep. So there's layers to that. He's choosing to trust the ghosts once again. He's choosing their intel, even though they're fucking dead. He's choosing to risk his life and literally walk past. He's choosing to follow the ghost's advice that this lock is going to work, right? This combination on the door is going to work. So there's 3 or 4 meaningful choices just in that situation. So it's just a great example of how you can create dilemmas and show your character. It shows how your character is growing and changing, right? Like Finn, when we meet him, he would probably be too afraid to do any of those things. And by showing the choices that he's making, you're showing how the character is growing and changing.
Right.
Yeah. So
did anybody wish that he chose to just slowly get a kitchen knife out and just slide it right into his neck as he was sleeping? Because that's the only thing I could think about in that whole scene.
Oh man,
just slide it into his neck, you know?
This choice discussion, it seems simple and stuff like that, but I'll say even for me, I think, this is something I can apply to my writing today that'll level it up a lot. And I'll tell you why. Because a lot of the writing I do, I almost don't give the hero a choice. Like I push them into uncomfortable situations, which is level 1, right? Like they have to go in the haunted house or they will die. You know what I mean? But if you can give them choices where they have to go in the haunted house, but the alternative is bad, but maybe they don't have to go into it. Maybe they do have a choice. Maybe it's a good idea to go in the haunted house, but it's risky versus to choose this other thing. It shows a lot more about their character. Because on the one hand, you just have a gun to their head and you're like, go in the haunted house. But if you can somehow pull that gun away, there's a gun that something has to be done. Something has to be done. They can either not go or go, and either one's going to have bigger ramifications in the macro. But I think there's a lot of value, like people can level up their writing today just by really going through their outlines or whatever and focusing on making things more of a dilemma, giving characters 2 bad choices and having them choose, because that shows character.
Yeah.
Also, to add a level to sort of what Jimmy was saying, he's also choosing to listen to voices that have been abusive to him.
Yes.
He has to actually trust people he was
abusers.
scared of. Yeah.
That's true, and very weird.
It's a very weird part of the theme.
Yeah. But I forgot to mention, or maybe this is the good time. Recently I've kind of codified this, like we try to do in this show, to help some of my clients kind of like put this into action. In other episodes, we've talked about, and Jamie, I believe this is coming from you, the before and after snapshot and the photo finish and those things. A great recent example is the Batman, where his before and after snapshots are very dramatically different, and they show the level of change. And that's a really good way to diagnose whether you've done the work to earn the arc, right? And a lot of times I will. So I've codified this recently for my clients as the old way, new way exercise instead of before and after. Old way, new way. And the old way is the wrong way, and the new way is the right way. And so when we meet them, they should be going the old way, the wrong way. And then we need some, Jamie, I'm using your term, we need some whiffs of change in between. We need some old way approaches, and then we need some new way approaches, and then we need steps back to the old way approaches, and then ultimately that'll earn the new way. And so like in Back to the Future, George's growing pains, George has a really big dramatic step back, right? He's making the plan to punch Biff and all this stuff, but in the moment that he has to do it, he chickens out for a second, and Biff is like doing exactly what they feared Biff would do, and he's taking advantage of Lorraine. And then he has the big moment of growth and change and punches Biff. So having those steps backwards is really impactful to earn the step forward. And I'll get this movie has great examples of the old way, new way. The old way, when we meet Finn, he's getting beat up, and there's a few scenes before that, but he's getting beat up. He's allowing himself to be bullied. And, we hear Robin say, you're going to have to learn to stand up for yourself. Then when he's locked up, here's the whiffs of change. When he's locked up in the basement, he starts to take springs out of the bed and be like, all right, I'm going to get into gear and get myself to escape. And he talks himself out of escaping. He literally says, if Robin can't do it, I can't do it either. So he's like, I'm not strong enough to do this. And then when he manages to escape the house, he has the chance to scream. All the lights are flickering on. He has the chance to scream and save himself. but the grabber is threatening his life and he's too afraid. So once again, he takes a step back. That's the old way, right? That's old Finn.
Right.
In that crucial moment, here's old Finn again. And then even with the Dark Night of the Soul, like he bashes the toilet into the wall and he can't get through the freezer and he starts crying. He breaks down and then he has that conversation with Robin and he's like, I'm not strong enough. I can't do this. And Robin's like, yes, you can. Like, remember what I told you? You're going to have to stand up for yourself someday. Except Finn says that I'm going to have to stand up for myself. And he's like, today is that day. And then they show us the new way, which is he literally stands up to the bully, outsmarts him, and beats him to death. So this is a great example of using that old way, new way exercise to really earn the arc. Because a lot of times I'll read a script and someone's like, here's what the arc is supposed to be. And then I look at the old way, new way stuff, and I'm like, well, in the old way, he or she, your character is behaving exactly the same as they are in the end. Or that new way comes like 20 minutes in. All this, they're learning to use the Force 20 minutes into the script.
They arc too soon.
So they've arced right away. Or the new way is no better than the old way. So this is, if you kind of take like you said, go through that outline, Jamie, and kind of look, are my characters sort of showing these little growing pains, these whiffs of change to earn that moment of that big climactic new way? Or is it just beat sheet execution where you have like two moments, one in the beginning, one in the end, and there's nothing in between? So this is a great example to learn from for that.
Very cool. Didn't think about that.
Yeah. Old way, new way.
Jimmy, you brought this thing to us like yesterday, right? This Robert Cargill's How to Write a Horror Movie Crash Course.
Yeah, so Cargill
over, yeah.
So Cargill, two notable things for listeners if you're not familiar with him. See Robert Cargill. And maybe it's Cargill. I don't know. Jamie, you're right. The pronunciation, I'm like, I've never actually.
No, it's so simple that it has to be that way. But
I'm pretty sure it's right. That's right. Yeah.
So, and it's funny. I've listened to his podcast that I'm going to talk about. So, two things about him. He is active. He is really active on Twitter, and he often tweets about the craft, specifically the craft of horror writing. And he also has a podcast, a screenwriting podcast, and I think it's for novelists too and short story writers, called Write Along. And there's like 70 episodes, and I've listened to quite a few of them, and they're really bite-sized, unlike our show. They're like 18 to 20 minutes each, and they basically just talk about one technique for the whole episode. And there's even a technique on there's even an episode on horror writing that's really good. It's episode 22, so check that out. Of Write Along. Yeah.
I wanted to say too, I being someone who in the early aughts was literally obsessed with Ain't It Cool News. To me, Robert Cargill was Mazworm.
Yeah.
And that was a huge part of my upbringing with film criticism, because he was like the best critic on there. Him the one who could actually write real film criticism.
Him and Drew McWeeny are kind of the two.
McWeeney's good too. Yeah,
they were the two that always stood out to me. Yeah,
right. That's why I will always forever associate him with, no matter how many movies he writes.
And I actually think that's his Twitter handle, Masser. His
I think it is
his Ain't It Cool handle.
Yeah.
So he tweeted out, and he's tweeted this out several times, but he tweeted out his writing prompts for creating his horror stories. And I thought it would be fun for the three of us to kind of mine the movie for examples of how he uses that in this. They're really simple. They're really easy. It just if you just look it up too, you can get this list, or you could just ask me if you want to. I'll just give it to you. This is Robert Cargill's How to Write a Horror Movie Crash Course. And he has how many? Let's see. He has eight
right?
prompts. Or just 8 guidelines to inspire. It's like Jamie, like Jamie always talks about. These things are to help you brainstorm. They're not rules. It's just one more tool in the tool shed.
If you don't do this, your movie will suck.
Yeah, Jesus, this guy and his rules. This was what he said with the tweet. He said, everyone needs to start somewhere. These are the points I start with. So, number 1, If you want to scare, make us care. The characters are the most important part. If we care about them, we'll get scared for them. Write interesting or likable characters, preferably both. Notice he doesn't say they must be likable, which is an important distinction we talk about a lot, which is like, just because a character is quote unquote unlikable doesn't mean they're not engaging. Joker, rooting influencers, 19 rooting influencers in the first 15 pages. So
right.
What do you guys think are some of the examples about the creating the likable characters in this movie?
This character to me, like sitting apart from watching it, it's not like one of the great characters that I loved. It's kind of a simple character. He's likable enough.
Mm-hmm.
I think he has a lot of those rooting resume check marks. Like he's bullied, he's bad, he likes his sister,
and
So I think it has a lot of checkbox rooting resume material. So he's definitely likable. I think it works craft wise. He doesn't stand out to me as like one of the great horror movie characters or something, because I think aside from that, he's kind of an everyman sort of
archetype. Yeah,
he's a bit of a shell.
Yeah,
to be filled, right? Yeah,
they did the thing where they didn't make him like the geeky kid who was getting beat
right.
Up, ordinary kid who the world's kind of picking on, and he's trying to live his life. And
the one bit of like uniqueness is he likes watching horror movies.
Yeah,
right.
even though they scare him.
Right?
Yeah,
yeah.
They do a little bit of things that need fixing. There's a girl in class who watches him at the game, and he fails in front of her, and then he sees her. Right. She sees him get beat up, and then he's in class and he's looking at her, and she looks at him and looks away. They do these little things that's a thing that needs fixing relationship wise. And they set up that he tutors that guy Robin with math, so that's a nice little rooting resume. He's smart and he's helpful. Yeah. So yeah. Okay. They do a bunch with Gwen too, the sister, but number 2, I think this is a good one. Is right. It seems obvious, but it's really important. Number 2, write what scares you. What scares you scares others. Like, how do you think this movie taps into that?
Yeah, and this probably goes back to the Joe Hill of it all, because in some ways he was probably the originator of the write what scares you. But
right,
so the stranger danger grabber kind of thing. Certainly, if you were a kid of that era or any era, if you grew up, that scares you. It scares you as a parent. It scared you growing up. And to take it back to that era is definitely something that would resonate with me personally.
But also like claustrophobia, being detained, being ghosts. Yeah.
But what kid is? I mean, most kids are
even right down to scary masks.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, if that freaks you out, this is a great movie if you're scared of scary smiles.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. They like manifested a lot of the different childhood fears.
Yeah.
It is a great mask. I think I read Tom Savini made it.
Cool.
Oh, really? It's amazing.
Awesome.
Mask. Yeah.
It's so unusual about Tom Savini. And I'm going to say this not knowing a ton about him recently, but I kind of remember he retired, right? He mostly retired. He doesn't do like effects for movies, but every now and then he'll come back and make a mask for something. Like there was a wrestler who had a mask and he made it, and it was a really cool looking mask that the guy used to wrestle with. It was kind of like what he did in some ways for this movie.
He still got it.
I also like that this movie had like 3 variations on it.
Right.
Yeah,
like,
they were.
that
was a nice, fresh mask killer thing.
And it shows that the killer's been doing it so long that he needed variations on the damn things.
That's a good call, Bob. I really like that. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. That's fresh. I like that.
Yeah.
It's that nightmare prompt. I've talked about the nightmare fuel before. Like, there's the 2 prompts that I do when I'm coming up with ideas for my character, and sometimes just my story, is ask yourself for the character, like, I'll do anything you need me to do to achieve the goal, except the one thing you need me to do, which is face my fears. And answering that question is really going to help you like figure out what this movie is about. And in this case, they definitely explore all that childhood trauma stuff. And then another one I do that's related to this, the prompt is, how could the worst thing that ever happened to your character end up being the best thing that ever happened to your character? And exploring that question has to do a lot with the nightmare fuel. How does the nightmare fuel make your character grow and change? So this is a great example of that. and really all horror movies, all dudettes with the problem are an exploration of that. So Cargill's number 3 on the horror crash course. Make sure something scary happens every 10 pages or so. Any longer, and the audience forgets they're in a horror film. Jamie, I know you have experience with this.
Yeah. I mean, this is, how we said there aren't rules. This is one of those rules that some producers and studios actually have, and they insist upon. Like, and the first place I heard about it, of all places, was Sam Raimi. I actually heard Ghost House had the first place I encountered it, I think, was Ghost House. I think they were like, we need a horror beat every 10 pages. But it turned out it wasn't really them. It was everybody had it. It was just, that was the first place I had somebody give me like they literally went through to map out that there was one every 10 pages.
Haven't you been hired to do scare passes before?
Yep. And that too. And then what happens also if your script doesn't adhere to this, or maybe the 10 aren't so great, they'll hire people like me to go and try to punch them up or do, just write the gags, so to speak.
Yeah, you're like a comedian punching it up with jokes. Yeah.
It's like a joke punch, except it's the scare beats.
Doing a scare pass. Yep.
Yeah. The one thing I always have trouble with is scare beat means a lot of different things to different people. Like, is a jump scare a scare beat? It's like, oh, I threw a cat at somebody on page 10. That's my scare beat. I kind of have a weird rule for myself about it. Like, it has to be something premise specific, scary. You know what I mean? Like, it can't just be something else. It has to be something that really adheres, and something that would only happen in a horror movie. That's kind of the way I kind of force myself down that path. But
that's a good rule of thumb. I like to say that the great jump scares are payoffs, not like the alien egg opens up. He's looking down on it, and the jump scare is the thing bursts out into his fucking face.
Right.
That's a payoff jump scare. It's not a cheat. So
I remember, and this movie isn't even that bad, but
not that.
No, not that. But do you remember the recent Blair Witch movie? Did you see that by chance?
I saw it in theaters with you, Jamie.
Oh yeah. So I remember it was so chock full of jump scares.
It's the loudest movie I've ever seen in theater.
So even somebody unzipping the tent was a jump zip, and it was like, ah! And it was
I remember we walked out and we were all like, why was it so loud for Blair Witch movie?
And maybe it wasn't even supposed to be like that, but the whole
somebody
time,
in the projection booth was like, yes.
Yeah, it was like it was like somebody would pop a soda and it was a jump scare. You're like, because it was so loud. Maybe now that you say that, maybe that wasn't even intentional. Maybe they just over modulated the volume.
I haven't watched it since then. I just remember how hilarious it was, just how like we were like getting like our ears punched by this movie, and I was like, is this necessary?
Yeah. I just thought they way overdid the James Wan thing. I thought they were
But speaking on laughs, number 4 of Cargill's horror writing crash course. Be funny if and when you can. Not so much that you turn it into a comedy, but that it's used as a tension release. The audience will reset and be ready to be scared again. Character humor works best here. So what are some examples in this movie, you think?
I think that I love the ghost that is the bully. That's a complete dickhead, and I love the fact that he didn't change in the afterlife. There's no like self-reflection or anything with his ghost. He's just still this complete asshole,
you fucking piece of shit.
Right. He's still yelling at this kid like he is alive. He has not changed at all. To me, that was funny, but also it totally works with the premise. Doesn't take you out of it.
Doesn't take you out of it.
And it's a nice little palate cleanser to how serious and mysterious the other ghosts were.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a good.
Yeah,
there's some other like. The brother we talked about, he's definitely
the brother is fucking funny.
Yeah, his cocaine.
He's got a comic obsession with the murder.
Yeah, right. That's happening underneath of him.
Yeah.
Right.
This does something a little different, the tension release, but Ethan Hawke's kind of funny in it in his own way, right?
Yeah.
But that almost makes it more creepy because there's some killer beneath it or something.
He's got a sense of humor. He's doing a lot of sing-song. He starts singing off in his lines.
Yeah.
I liked two things I like with the use of this technique, this prompt, is the sister in the interrogation. She calls the detectives fart knockers,
Yeah.
and she's like, she's praying, and she's like, "What the hell, Jesus?" Which I thought was a funny thing to see a little girl like saying to Jesus, "What the hell?"
And that scene, like, it's really good because she's like, "What the hell, Jesus?" And then it kind of gets this little moment of reality where she's like, "Maybe you don't exist.
Maybe you don't exist."
And it's like this totally deep moment from that really jokey scene.
Yeah. So
they definitely did a dialogue punch for that character. You know what I mean? That character
definitely
is like, super funny.
She is, and she's a lot often comic relief. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
With her vulgarness, and
she's precocious and
Number 5, your main character should evolve. Your character should be changed by their exposure to scary shit. That should be the point of the character. So, I mean, we pretty much talked about Finn.
Yeah, we covered that.
Yeah, we covered that. So this movie does that. I was curious to see if all of these questions were relevant to this movie. And number 6, know your audience's genre expectations. If it's science fiction, the audience will expect everything to make logical sense. If the horror is of magical origin, they'll give you more leeway. So that's that double mumbo jumbo discussion.
This guy did write Doctor Strange. So
yeah, and that phone thing, we don't need the exact, like, the phone, the people died next to the phone, and it's magical, like, it's magical, it's supernatural. We don't have to understand it.
Yeah, and even if it was science fiction, the flux capacitor is never explained in Back to the Future, and that's why it works.
They probably did die next to the phone, though, Jamie. I mean,
well, true.
All things considered.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes.
Yeah. If someone were to break it down, yeah.
Hey, right. That's in the room. Right?
Yeah. So imagine number 7. Imagine all the possible ways your characters could escape any deadly situation, because the audience most assuredly will. The characters should make the most logical choices.
I mean, the whole movie is this.
Yep.
Right?
It's an exploration of that.
I never felt cheated or like he did anything that made me angry.
But this is a good example, though, where I've seen criticisms of this movie that are like, why would he put him in the basement with a window in it, and stuff like that? Or couldn't he just couldn't he have used the mattress to climb to the window? Things like that. No. And it is where you get into trouble with these kind of movies, because when you're in a life or death situation, people will try to figure out every possible thing to get out of it. By the way, none of those were necessarily things that occurred to me, but I remember just seeing people start nitpicking.
Isn't that always the way? I mean, that proves his point.
It proves his point. That I'm just trying to prove. I
made a laundry list of all these really clever premise-specific tactics that he did, and there's all the internet saying he didn't do enough.
Yeah, he didn't. He could have easily put the mattress up and climbed up the mattress using the footholds of the blah. But it's like
the one I like was the meat locker, because I was like, this is good because it's just that the fact that he's a kid that he can't either break that open or like move the whole thing away.
Yeah, because we would push
an adult
it,
probably with everything they had could probably move that thing or break open the doors, but this kid can't,
Right.
So like, even if you're in your mind, you're like angry that he can't do something, you're like, but he's a kid.
Yep. Yeah,
that
was a great touch, and it makes it all the more harrowing. Like, God damn it. Yep, I felt that too. I felt like, oh man, if he was a little bigger, he could push.
He could totally do this thing. Right.
That was a nice little touch that we both felt that in that moment. That's awesome. And then this one is less a prompt and more just like good guidance. Number 8, horror tends to be brief unless you have a lot of deep character work. Aim for 100 pages.
Yeah,
I don't have the script, but.
Yeah, I don't think it's out there. I kind of did a quick look.
What's the runtime on this movie?
So the runtime is an hour and 43 minutes, but the credits roll at 95 minutes. So it's under probably around, the page per minute doesn't always track, but it's the closest thing we have. And so it's probably going to be around 100 pages, at least what they shot, what's in the final cut. So maybe the script is like 120.
And just as somebody that writes spec horror stuff and shops it around, this is something you should aim for. I mean, it's not there are no rules if you write a grade 120 pages, but I've seen scripts these days that when I first started, if you had something under 90, it was like, you're not done yet. Go back and add a page or two. I've seen things that are close to 80. And they're fine, and nobody blinks an eye. But I think if you're getting over 100 and you're writing this kind of horror, you're in trouble. There's other kinds of horror movies that may be longer, but they're probably the kind of non-monster in the house horror movies.
Yes,
they're probably something else. Like, I don't even. I'm trying to think, like, what are the good longer horror movies that you can think of, like the 2.5 hour horror movies?
I bet Midsommar is. But 2 hours.
But you know what? Midsommar feels like it should be 100. You know what I mean?
And that's to your point, right? It's the character work. It's character work.
And I like that movie and a lot. You know, you can go back and listen to the podcast. But if I was writing Midsommar, it would be 100 pages.
Yeah.
There's no way.
It's that old adage. Every person in the process who stands in the way of saying yes or no when they're reading your script to get it to the next level is looking for reasons to say no. That's their job. And the first thing that's going to give them pause before they even open the script is if the PDF is 126 pages. And then they're going like, wow, this is already way more expensive than the script on my desk next to it that's 92 pages. Like every page is more money.
There's just something about the way these should read that if they're 120 pages, something doesn't feel right. They feel so tight and tense and fast and page turners. And when they get to 120, sometimes they don't feel like that. Unless I'm trying to think of a movie, because I actually am working on something now that's kind of a horror movie that is probably going to be 110 pages.
Yeah, always exceptions, right? Yeah.
And I tell you what it has. It has, first of all, it has multiple points of view, different characters, like from multiple points of view of the horror. So it's not just one person. And then two, it has a lot of world building kind of stuff, you know? So those two factors are going to push me over the 100-page mark, but it feels very different than this. And I'm trying to think without giving away what I'm doing. I was trying to think of a movie that might feel like it, but I can't really think of one. So I'll just leave it at that.
All right.
Okay. I think, well, with that, I think we've reached the end of the Black Phone for us.
The Black Phone, yes.
Right. And do you guys have anything that you want to like plug or anything like that? You want to tell people? I know Jamie has a book. We already covered that. I've been mentioning the last few times, and this won't age well, but I am going to the Austin Film Festival in October of this year. So it's the weekend of Halloween. It's like the Friday, Saturday, Sunday before Halloween. I'll be there Friday, Saturday. And if anybody's there, hit me up or message me on Twitter. I'll make sure to say hi.
Hell yeah.
Cool.
I guess I'll plug, since it is September, we're approaching Halloween, a film that I co-wrote and co-produced that Bob is also involved in, and Jamie helped write the story. WNUF Halloween Special is on Shudder. It's only on Shudder for like 3 more weeks. Unless you're in other countries and it's on there a little longer, but it's only on the US Shudder for like 3 more weeks. So check that out. Get in the Halloween spirit.
Very cool.
Cool. And I just want to say, anyone listening to this episode, go do us a favor and go watch the Blair Witch movie and tell us how.
You mean the
loud
new
it is.
Blair Witch?
The new one, not the original.
The Blair Witch.
The Blair Witch. And I want to know if anyone else thinks it's extremely loud.
Yeah, I bet. I don't know.
I really want to know.
For some reason, Bob, I think you and I were sitting like in the front row or something.
It might have been. I just remember it was like just a complete assault on my senses. Where it was exhausting.
Not in the good way.
It was exhausting by the time it was over. I just I don't know. I just remember that that was a visceral experience.
Yes, it was the most tense, scary movie I've ever seen, but maybe not for the right reasons.
It's because my ears hurt.
Yeah,
it's crazy. All right, I think that's everything, guys.
Yeah, it's everything.
Yep. Thanks for listening.
All right, thanks for listening, everyone.
Bye-bye.
You have just listened to Writer's Blockbusters, a screenwriting podcast featuring 2 professionals and another guy. Available only on Thundergrunt.